Happy to be here. Ms. Dillon, I know we're going to talk on the phone at some point soon, and I appreciate it that you're willing to do that. I've led efforts to protect voters' access to the polls and the security of our elections, the Freedom to Vote Act, setting basic national standards to make sure all Americans can vote in a way that works best for them regardless of their zip code. John Lewis once said, "The right to vote is precious and almost sacred and one of the most important blessings of our democracy. Today, we must be vigilant in protecting that blessing." Do you agree?
Senator, I agree with everything that you said with respect to the importance of the right to vote. I think it is a sacred right, and I promise to safeguard that right if confirmed to this position.
Okay, thank you. Your comments earlier, though, you've written about the Voting Rights Act, referring to it as a law, and this was in 2022, referring it to as a law that, quote, was once, and I emphasize once, necessary to push back on Jim Crow laws. I have concerns about, of course, the Civil Rights Division under your leadership, whether or not it will enforce the Voting Rights Act. Isn't it true that 2 years ago, the Supreme Court reaffirmed Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which prohibits states and localities from enacting laws or taking actions that have the effect of denying or abridging the right to vote on the basis of race?
That's correct, Senator, and I would add that I don't know the full context of the quote that you read, but of course we all know that the United States Supreme Court has actually struck down provisions of the Voting Rights Act as unconstitutional, specifically Section 4A, which effectively renders Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act a nullity unless Congress acts to fill in the gaps.
I was referring to Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act in Allen v. Milligan. But will you commit, the bigger thing for me, to vigorous enforcement of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, including with respect to groups that have been subject to historic discrimination on the basis of race, ethnicity, or language minority status?
Thank you, Senator. I would have to see the facts, but if the facts merited a Section 2 investigation and or legal action, I would certainly pursue that.
Okay. Will you commit to not reassigning or firing career attorneys in the division based on their political and ideological affiliations, who they voted for, or their views of the 2020 election?
Senator, without getting into the job itself and understanding all of the motivations of individuals, I can't really commit to any particular personnel decisions. However, I will say that in my home state of California, we have laws about that, and that is certainly my general practice to not react against people based on solely on their political views.
All right. Mr. Sauer, at the nomination hearing for President Trump's first-term Solicitor General, Noel Francisco, Chair Grassley said, quote, "It is the responsibility of the Solicitor General to defend the law even when they don't personally agree with the law," end quote. Mr. Francisco agreed, stating that the Solicitor General is a lawyer representing the United States. What matters are the views expressed by the United States in the statutes that this body passes. Do you agree it is the duty of the Justice Department to defend the laws Congress passes, and will you commit to do so even when the President may disagree with an act campaigned against its passage or called for its repeal?
I believe Mr. Francisco stated that the duty of the Solicitor General is to defend the validity of congressional enactments when there are reasonable arguments available to do so. I think he noted an exception in certain cases where there's a conflict between a claim of encroachment on the President's Article 2 authority, and I would commit to following those principles that he outlined in his testimony.
All right. I also note that on her first day in office, the Attorney General issued a memo in which she said DOJ lawyers must be zealous advocates for their clients' interests. And then she said, and this was troubling to many of us, and to do otherwise deprives the president of the benefits of his lawyers. When you served as a prosecutor in the Eastern District of Missouri during the Obama administration, did you see yourself as President Obama's lawyers?
I believe as an attorney for the Department of Justice at any level, as I said to Senator Lee, the client of that attorney would be the United States or the people of the United States.
All right. So thank you. And all justice lawyers, as you know, take an oath to the Constitution. And as you note, their client is the people of the United States. I asked this of Todd Blanche, and he answered that is true. And so your client will, in fact, be the United States government and the United States of America and not the president. That's right?
I stand by my prior answer.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar.